Welcome to Out of Frame, the podcast where we explore how Black women navigate the digital world, exploring the biases, barriers, and breakthroughs shaping our online experiences. I'm your host, Christina Brown. When you're scrolling through social media and you're on your For You page or your Explore page, you see thousands of posts. But have you ever thought about the post you don't see? What shows up on your feed isn't random, it's usually curated by an algorithm. But are algorithms truly neutral systems? When I first started researching algorithm bias, I was focused solely on numbers, how many likes, views, comments, and overall engagement. I was searching for patterns and visibility. But a deeper investigation led me to Black women who not only were being overlooked, but their content was being suppressed and even stolen. Many struggled to put into words what felt like a form of digital discrimination. From content theft to shadow bans, their experiences revealed a more deeper, troubling reality, one I couldn't ignore. Algorithms control what we see online, but because we can't see how they're designed, it can be challenging to understand how they work.
There's a general understanding that algorithms play a significant role in the content that we ultimately see on our feeds. But when it comes to actually analyzing algorithmic bias and how it works, that process can feel a little bit more like a black box.
That's when I turned to Wesley Stevens, a Temple PhD alum and now a professor at the University of South Carolina who studies algorithm bias and digital inequalities.
So we spend time in class talking about how does bias come into play in the process of building and training an algorithm, and then how do we get a racist output?
Behind every algorithm is a human or a team of humans who design, train, and refine how it works.
You have a team of engineers who are tasked with creating an algorithm from scratch, or sometimes revising or slightly tweaking an algorithm, or creating one to perform a really specific task on a platform that might have changed its community guidelines or changed something else. And so you go through the process of training the algorithm, depending on what it's for, with a robust series of images again and again, trying to train it to recognize and pick up on whatever it is supposed to be the focal point.
The problem is, if the data being used to train the algorithm lacks diversity, bias can become built into the system.
Say Instagram changes their community guidelines around nudity to specifically focused on breast squeezing. The algorithm is undergoing a lot of training, especially visually, to recognize what breast squeezing looks like. And if the team of engineers happens to be largely white or largely men, there might necessarily be types of images that just don't come to mind to include in the data set that's being used to train the algorithm.
When algorithms fail to recognize diverse body types, it can have harmful consequences, especially for Black women. That's exactly what happened to Naomi Nicholas Williams, a Black content creator, plus-size model, and body-positive advocate. During a photo shoot, Naomi posed in a one-shoulder dress, folding it down as the shoot progressed on. And in one particular artful shot, she posed topless but fully covered, with her arms draped over her shoulders, and she stayed in athletic shorts. Yet, Instagram flagged and removed her images for violating their nudity policy, while her photographer, a thin white woman, posted similar, even more revealing photos, and those images stayed up. People quickly called out Instagram's decision, and the hashtag #IWannaSeeNaomi began to gain traction across all of social media. The message was clear. Users were demanding to see Naomi, whose images had been unfairly taken down.
And so Naomi had reached out to Instagram to ask about what had happened and to try and challenge the fact that it was shadow banned. And Instagram's initial response from a platform basis was, sorry, it violated our community guidelines. That's why it's shadow banned, but no effort to undo that decision.
But as the hashtag kept growing, media outlets picked up the story, and it wasn't just an online conversation anymore, it became news. Only after the backlash did Instagram release a public statement.
At that point, because it had gotten so big, Instagram kind of took a second look, and that's when they released their public statement saying, we apologize to Naomi. It turns out this was an accident. Our algorithm and our different community guidelines around nudity was meant to kind of crack down and focus on breast squeezing, which was not actually in any of Naomi's photos. The algorithm had mistaken it for breast squeezing, essentially because of the size of her arms and how her body laid on herself, on her upper half.
So the algorithm made a mistake. But was it really a mistake? Instagram's algorithm didn't simply misinterpret Naomi's photo. It actively discriminated against her body type. And this is what it means when we say an algorithm is racist.
We're not saying that the team of people themselves are comprised of racists. We're talking more about how human bias necessarily shapes technology, that technology is not neutral.
But the problem doesn't stop there. Algorithms have the power to shape whose voices are heard and whose voices are silenced. I also talked to Wesley about content suppression. And in 2021, during the height of a series of Black Lives Matter protests, Black creators noticed something troubling. Here's Ziggy Tyler's experience with TikTok's algorithm.
Here's why I'm frustrated. If I go into the creator marketplace and I put supporting white supremacy and I hit accept, it's okay. And it lets me have my asking rate at $500. White supremacy. But God forbid, let me put Black Lives Matter on there. Watch. It says it's a threat. Boom. Inappropriate content. Can't say that. I cannot say Black people. This is my screen recording.
But suppression isn't the only issue. Content theft is another way Black creators are erased on social media. Black creators have been behind some of TikTok's most viral dance trends. Yet, white influencers were the one capitalizing, landing brand deals, TV appearances, sponsorships. While the original Black creators, again, mostly women and girls, were left without any credit. So it raises the question, who does the algorithm amplify and who does it erase? Black creators have long described an uphill battle for visibility, having to put in significantly more effort just to get their content seen.
It's a conclusion I draw in my dissertation, and definitely a sentiment that came up during the interviews I did with Black creators. An influencer saying that we have to work twice as hard to get half as much.
And for Black women, when they do gain visibility, they face another challenge.
Hypervisibility is really just about how, for especially Black women in particular, when you enter the public arena, you are suddenly subject to more intense scrutiny, to more intense forms of hate for simply existing and being in the space.
Hypervisibility refers to the excessive attention or scrutiny placed on individuals due to their identity, often based on race, gender, disability, or other marginalized characteristics. Unlike mere visibility, hypervisibility magnifies differences, making individuals stand out in ways that can be isolating, exhausting, or even harmful. For Black women online, visibility comes with a cost, being picked apart, policed, or targeted just for showing up as themselves. As cultural critics Sadet Harry and others have pointed out, hypervisibility isn't just about being seen. It's about being closely watched and judged. Here are some real examples. This comment was left on a TikTok by content creator Elise Osafo, who goes by @LTheEgg. You named your Siamese cat Rice? LOL. What did you name your black cat? Popeyes? ? Under a product review video from beauty influencer Gloria, someone wrote, "In the best way possible, you look like you could be a Tim Burton character. Like he says Black people don't fit his aesthetic, but I see it so much with you. You are so gorgeous." And on another skincare video, she was told, "Black skin absorbs the sun. White skin repels sunlight. They are not the same. Black skin doesn't need sunscreen." So this paradox of fighting to be seen only to face heightened criticism once visibility is achieved isn't just about social media. It's a reflection of much larger systemic issues, ones that have shaped the experiences of Black women for decades, for generations.
It all comes back to larger systemic, political, and also cultural structures that have been built over the centuries, is why we're here and why Black influencers are going through what they are right now.
These systems didn't appear out of nowhere. They've been built over time, layer by layer, through generations of racism, sexism, and exclusion. And long before social media, Black feminist scholars and activists were calling out these injustices that others chose to ignore. Bell Hooks, Patricia Hill Collins, and Kimberly Crenshaw have shown how race and gender don't just operate separately. They intersect, overlap, and collide in ways that affect Black women in all areas of life, from wage gaps to healthcare access to how they're represented or misrepresented in the media and even politics. And Black feminist activist groups like the Combahee River Collective made it clear. If Black women aren't free, none of us are. Their work reminds us that visibility alone isn't freedom, and representation isn't the same thing as equality. So what's the solution? Are platforms aware about these issues on algorithm bias? And more importantly, do they care?
If algorithmic bias exists and maybe upsets a segment of users, and yet the profits maybe haven't changed, or actually maybe the engagement is higher because of the controversy, a social media company's primary goal as a business is to make money.
I agree with Wesley. For social media companies, it's all about profit and revenue, and at the end of the day, it goes back to capitalism. Which led me to think, what other impacts could algorithm bias have on the careers of Black influencers and their financial success? Furthermore, what other challenges do they face just from having a social media career? That's what we'll talk about in the next episode. See you there.